Welcome to What's the Score, a series solely dedicated to the support of Central Florida's small business and entrepreneurs. Donated as a community service by AM 660 The Answer and Salem Communications. Now, here's Christopher Hart and Rich Jaeckle.
Welcome to What's the Score. Thanks for joining us today, folks. Hi, I'm Christopher Hart of the American Adversaries Radio Show, and I want to welcome you to the show that's here to help you come up with that winning combination for your business. That's right, folks. And thanks for being with us today. And in the studio, we've got a full complement. We've got, of course, Paul McNally from SCORE. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Excellent. And in the studio with us today, our guest is Joshua Johnson. And Joshua's a fantastic young entrepreneur, and he's going to tell us how he got to be that way. Joshua, thanks for coming in and being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And, of course, back by popular demand, we have our very own Rich, Dr. Jaeckle of SCORE. So, Rich, how you doing today?
Chris, life is a Cabernet.
Oh?
And speaking of Cabernets, we were at the NFL Players Association last night, weren't we?
Indeed we were at Morton's
Can you
Restaurant.
want to talk a little bit about that one?
Well, it was a really fun time.
I don't remember.
Well, no wonder you don't remember the way you were tilted on back. But it was at Morton's Steakhouse down there on Dr. Phillips and Sand Lake Road, a really nice restaurant. And we were there, compliments of Mike McBath and the NFL Players Association. Right. And, of course, he's the president of the Retired Players Association. They call it the Former Players Association. And they have a meeting about once a month, generally speaking, about 8 or 10 a year. And it's always a lot of fun just, to hang out with these ex-pro football players and other athletes and media types who show up there. And they also do some serious business there. But
they really do. And so the reason we're involved with them is many of them are giving back to society or giving back to the community in forms of teaching young entrepreneurs and that kind of thing. So these athletes are now working with younger people, and that's where we come in to lecture on how to start a business. If you're a young entrepreneur, and we'll be talking to Joshua later about that, but if you're a young entrepreneur, you want to know how to start your own business, we'll come in and lecture their kids and stuff.
And it's a fabulous program. And these ex-NFL players are all great guys. And they really do, in a number of ways, reach out to help the community in charity golf events, charity bowling events that they do. Reggie Branch does himself. And also, there's some great entrepreneurs amongst the bunch, too.
The Predators?
Yeah, definitely. But one of the players whose name jumps out in mind when I think of entrepreneur is Walter Briggs.
Yes.
Walter Briggs played for the New York Jets and star player, and he now has a cigar store with his own brand of cigars.
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, he's not like a retailer who buys these things wholesale from Rio Garcia or whoever. Yeah. They have their own cigar factory. Make their own cigars, and these are custom cigars basically, and he provides them to a lot of clients. Mm-hmm. And he has a store out there in Winter Garden. And it's a fantastic story, but he's also going through something right now that none of us would want to face. His wife has ALS.
Yes, I heard.
And he talked about that last night, and he said something that I'd just like to mention briefly, and that is that, we hear about this ice bucket campaign right now, which is fantastic in the sense that it's bringing a lot more attention to ALS and the need for research for ALS. The problem, though, is that money doesn't go to help people who have ALS right now, and his wife has ALS. And I've seen her over the last couple of years, and she's progressed to the point where she cannot walk anymore. She has to be in a wheelchair, and that's happened over the last year. But bless her heart, she's the sweetest thing and prettiest girl that you'll ever meet in your life.
Yep.
And it really just tears at my heart. But he is still doing his job, doing his business, and still trying to help the community.
Right.
Just a great bunch of guys. A great bunch of guys over there.
He's so good that I've heard that Fidel buys his cigars through him.
He does twist up some pretty good cigars, I'll tell you that right now.
Hey, Chris, I've got an idea here.
What's that?
We've got this ice bucket challenge going on. It's just going crazy all over the world.
Yep.
I think that we should have one with Rich and have an ice bucket challenge, and Rich could do that maybe next week.
How about beer bucket?
Let's not waste good beer.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, but I'm glad you mentioned that about the players because, of course, it was Mike McBath who introduced me to you and brought you to our show. And it was
You haven't talked to me since, you know that?
Mike hasn't either, has he? No. And Mike also introduced us to Terry Purdom, who was on the show last week, and she was there last night. And she's a great entrepreneur, too. Yeah. And it's just a really fantastic organization. By that, I mean SCORE, folks, because this is all about people networking and helping other people. And the fellas like Rich and Paul, who volunteer there and put their time and their experience out there for you to take advantage of, is a tremendous gift that they're offering. And there's no other way to put it because there's no charge for these mentoring services and a minimal charge for the seminars. And speaking of the seminars, we got an important one coming up real soon, don't we, Paul?
We've got one coming up Saturday, September 6th, 9:30 in the morning. It'll run for 3 hours till 12:30. And it's you, your business idea, and how SCORE can help. And it's a good introduction to all of the seminars that we do to show what SCORE can do to help you be successful. And there's free of charge. Just show up at the National Entrepreneur Center. And then also on September 9th, the same seminar will be done again. That's a Tuesday evening from 6 to 9. So you've got two options there to do that.
Either the weekend morning on that Saturday or the following Tuesday evening. So they do it so folks within mind that you're out there working and trying to make a living. So they've tried to make it convenient. And, of course, being free, you can't beat the price.
You cannot beat the price. And you can see all of our seminars at our website, which is scoreorlando.com.
.org. .org.
There you go. Right. That's right. That's right. You can find out more about SCORE. You can see what they have to offer. You can download documents like a P&L statement, business plan forms. Yeah, templates.
Business plans.
You name it. They've got it there.
Great.
And that's scoreorlando.org. And if you would like to send suggestions to us for future shows or have questions, and we've got a couple that are coming in, and we appreciate that, go to score@nationalec.org. We'd love to hear your comments, questions, or suggestions. That's score@nationalec.org.
And, Chris, we had a comment this past week saying that last week's show was the best show that we've ever had.
Wait a minute.
I don't know why that happened.
I wasn't on last week's show.
There could be pretty much two reasons. Either it was because Terry was here or Rich wasn't. No, Rich, of course, is back by popular demand. So let's bring Joshua into this. Joshua is by the looks of him, he's a lot younger than the rest of us here. I'll let him tell us more about that. But, Joshua, how did you get involved? I understand that you were an intern at the National Entrepreneur Center. We'll talk more about that in the next segment. But what got you from point A to point B, so to speak?
To get into the internship?
Yeah.
Well, basically, I had been an entrepreneur before I started going back to school. And I knew that while I was in school, it'd be very difficult for me to run my own company.
Now, you mean in school, you're talking about college?
College, yes.
That's okay.
Where did you go to school?
At UCF.
Very good.
And your major?
I studied business, marketing, and entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So I knew it'd be difficult for me to run my own company while I was in school, just my personal traits. But I wanted to make sure I stayed around that community. And when an opportunity opened up at the Entrepreneur Center, I jumped on it immediately.
Now, you say you were already in business before you went back to college, or you went to college.
Sure.
Did you soon out of high school start your own business? Is that how that more or less became?
While I was in high school. I was 16 when I started my first company. I actually had an occupational license, had to go in front of the city commission, the whole deal.
You had to appear in front of the commission. What was it?
Yes.
What was the reason for that?
It was to get my licensing, and also had to do with the storage of some chemicals.
Oh, yes.
So were you pool maintenance or something like that?
It was automotive detailing.
Automotive detailing, okay. And you got into that even before you were out of high school. So did you use that money to build your business, or did you use that money to buy a nice car and to take the girls out? I mean, what did you do?
A little bit of both. Okay. I've always been one to try to prepare for the future, so I definitely set some aside. I knew that wasn't going to be my long-term company, but it was something I could do right now. The startup costs were fairly small. There wasn't a lot to overhead to get in, so I jumped straight in. And I love cars, so it was a good fit for me.
All right. And Paul, I want to bring you into this because you just mentioned something, that there wasn't a lot of overhead to get into this. Now, you're a business broker out there, and you're obviously dealing with people who want to buy or sell turnkey operations, so to speak. But how common is it for a business to start low or no overhead like Joshua did?
It's very common, and they can build those up with with doing business. Mm-hmm. And when we go to sell a business like that, and we do have auto detailing businesses that we have sold in the past, and it's all based on profitability. Mm-hmm. So that's the bottom line. It really isn't how much it costs to get started. It's all about profitability. And most of your service-type businesses, which that would fall into, are fairly inexpensive to get into because there's not a lot of equipment that is needed. It's smaller pieces of equipment.
Yep. Okay. And I started out mobile, so I didn't have to go out. And, in fact, it was very difficult for me to get onto a lease. So because of my age. So I started out with a mobile operation, just having out of the back of my car, eventually a truck, and then eventually open up a shop.
Speaking of that, the Entrepreneur Center, the guy across the street in the parking lot there rented 3 parking spots, and he's an ex-felon. So when he got out, he didn't have any money or anything like that. So he did the same thing. He went into automotive detailing, and it was right across from the Entrepreneur Center on Lake Eola. He rented 3 parking places 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. And he would, as people would drive in and go to the office, they would leave the car, and it would be detailed when they came out. Well, that got so big, there were people waiting in line to get detailed. And at the end of the day, you'd see about 20 cars out there that had been detailed by him. And it was a great idea.
Joshua, do you still have that business?
No, I don't.
You sold it.
I did, actually. A good friend of mine was working for me at the time, and it was time for me to transition out into something else, and so he just continued paying me a portion of the profits, and I let him take over the company.
Okay, and you went back to school at UCF studying business and marketing, and that's what got you into the intern program, which landed you at the Entrepreneur Center. Okay, which, by the way, folks, is located in the Fashion Square Mall. You can walk in 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, or give them a call if you'd like to make an appointment with SCORE through the Entrepreneur Center. If you want to make an appointment with Rich or find out when he's not going to be there, and that'll be the time you come in, give him a call over there at 407-420-4844. That's the Entrepreneur Center, and they'll hook you straight up with SCORE. That's 407-420-4844. When we come back from this break, we're going to be talking with Joshua what it meant to be an intern while he was an intern and what it has meant to his business success since he has been out on his own. So please stick around for that. And once again, if you'd like to find out more about SCORE, go to orlandoscore.org. And if you'd like to send us a suggestion, go to score@nationalec.org. We'll be right back. Welcome back to What's the Score? Thanks again, folks, for joining us today. I'm Christopher Hart in the studio today with Paul McNally and Rich Jaeckle from SCORE. And they've brought in Joshua Johnson, who they met through the Entrepreneur Center. And we're going to be talking with him in just a moment. But first, I'd like to remind you, folks, if you would like to have a show like this, it's not that tough. It's not that expensive, especially if you get with a couple other fellas or a couple other gals and put together a little program yourselves. Or if you'd like to get into radio advertising, it's a great way to get your name of your organization out there. If you'd like to find out more, call Paul Proley at 407-618-1769. That's call Paul at 407-618-1769. And I'd like to get back to the show now with Joshua Johnson. Joshua, you found yourself over at the Entrepreneur Center in an internship that you were with UCF.
That's correct.
And how long were you there?
Well, I was supposed to be there originally for 1 year. And while I was there, we kind of created a program to be managed by graduate students. So then I went to grad school and was there for about another year.
Okay.
So he met me over there, and that's what got him on his way to fame and fortune.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How directly did you work with SCORE? Now, I know you were with the Entrepreneur Center as the intern, but how directly did you work with SCORE?
Well, I worked with them frequently because a lot of times I was the front lines when people would first come into the center, and I'd help to direct them to the various providers in the center, and SCORE is obviously on the front lines of that. So I spoke with the various counselors on a number of occasions. I sat through tons of their seminars because I got to, I was already there, and it was really easy to access, and they always encouraged me to do that. So it was a great experience.
So Where'd you get the better education, at the Entrepreneur Center or at UCF?
So, being that I also teach at UCF, both aspects are extremely important. I'm a huge advocate for internships and getting real-world experience, especially when it comes to something like entrepreneurship, where it's not just about what's in a textbook, and that's. You have to get out there. You have to do it. You have to be around people who do it and learn from them.
Well, let me just say, as a UCF grad, that was sort of a trick question because obviously you're going to get a lot of each that you wouldn't get out of the other.
Absolutely.
You learn theory and all that sort of thing from the books, but there's really no substitute for hands-on experience.
Well, and you also build your network while you're in school if you're smart about it.
That's a good point, too. Absolutely. Now, being an intern, how about building your network through the internship?
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I got to know people like Rich. I mean, I was out there all the time. I always made it a point to get to know the people who are coming through the center and found ways to build, mutually beneficial relationships.
Now, we've been touting the thing that one of the keys to entrepreneurship is doing your homework. What have you found in that regard? Because, we want you to be sure that what you're getting into is going to be a livelihood for you.
Sure.
And that's our job. We don't want you to fail. So what can you say about that?
Well, I'll say that, speaking for myself personally and also with all the students I deal with, everybody has a ton of great ideas. At the end of the day, it's about the execution of those ideas, and you have to do the research in order to be able to truly execute on something. For every idea you have, you need to narrow it down. You can't have 10 great ideas and do them all at the same time. At least I certainly can't. I don't know most people that can. And so you have to spend some time really diving deep into them. When I started Learn Everywhere, I read over 800 research papers on the subject of memory, specifically with spaced repetition learning.
Before you even jumped into it?
Before we launched anything, yeah.
And seminars?
Sure.
What about seminars?
Absolutely. Anywhere you can go and you can speak with people who have been there and they've done that, that's always been beneficial, Okay. and their experience, sometimes you have to extrapolate from that and figure out how that's relevant to what you want to do. But there's always at least one or two or three nuggets to pull from that.
So you guys out there, we've been urging you all along to, if you don't know what you're getting into, your likelihood of failure is much higher. So please attend seminars, talk to people, and do your homework.
And Paul, you have talked on the show before about how important it is to go out and get a little experience in the business that you want to get into for people who are new to it.
Absolutely. It's one of the keys to success.
All right. Now, he, as a part of a university program, got an internship at the Entrepreneur Center. Can someone come in there off the street and do that? And also, are there businesses out there that would mentor someone if they were willing to work in that sort of relationship, or is that sort of thing illegal?
Nope, there are many companies that do bring interns into their organization. The UCF has a department that handles interns that you can call down there to them to get an intern. There are certain requirements that you have to meet depending on whether it's a paid position or a non-paid position. There's some, actually, that comes down to some legal requirements.
That's what I thought.
But you can go through UCF, and I also believe that Seminole State, somebody told me just last week that they've got an intern program now with now that they've got some 4-year programs.
Joshua, what does a typical intern do?
Well, that really depends on who the internship is with. So I was very fortunate. Jerry Ross is a consummate educator.
Who's Jerry Ross?
The executive director of the National Entrepreneur Center.
Okay.
He is a huge advocate for education, and he made it very clear to me that my job there was to learn from him and from the activities that went on in the center. And while I was there, to support the center in the ways that I could. So, being the client coordinator and helping to coordinate, folks that were coming through the doors. But it was, at the end of the day, it was always making sure that there was takeaways from that day and how I could apply that to my road down this.
So you got a lot of experience at customer service, client satisfaction.
I would say so.
That type.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is key to business.
I was going to say, how important has that been to your success since then?
It's critical because, especially when you own your own company, you're dealing with customers all the time. And, a lot of people say that you start your own company, you are your own boss, and that's true. But now you have hundreds or thousands of people that are going to try to tell you what to do because they're all your paying customers. And you have to know how to be able to relate to them and work with them, how to manage expectations, and how to keep relationships positive.
As a matter of fact, Paul, isn't that one of the most important parts of any business?
Absolutely. It actually is part of sales. Mm-hmm. I mean, getting along with your customers, and they are your paycheck each and every day, and that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah, if you make a great muffin, it's not going to sell itself. You've got to sell it.
Absolutely.
Especially at $5.
Yeah, there you go.
My first boss, Bill Perkins, from the Schwinn Cyclery, which was down on Mills Avenue, just south of Highway 50 there for many, many years, told me when my first job was with him, building bicycles and putting them together, I should say, out of the box. And he told me, he said, look, I can't sell enough new bikes to stay in business. Now, this was back when bikes were booming, sales were booming, and there weren't too many bicycle shops in town. He said, what makes this shop survive is the repair business, where the customers come back. I have to have repeat customers or I cannot survive. Every business is that way. No business really can survive on just one customer sale.
You go down with that customer.
Exactly. So you have to treat your customers right. You have to give them a good product or service at a fair price, and they'll come back. And if they don't, they'll soon be out of business, because I'm here to tell you, you can't find enough new customers for your product or service if you're not putting out quality stuff. And am I wrong, Joshua?
No, that is absolutely correct. You can continue to find new customers. They'll try you one time, but eventually even the new customers will stop coming in because the word will get out that your service or your product is terrible.
That's right. And no soup for you.
That's right.
And it's expensive if you're always looking for new customers.
Absolutely.
That's prospecting is expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. I was surprised when he told me that, and he showed me some of the numbers of his books. And at that time, Schwinn bicycles were still being built in Chicago, and they had basically control over the price of the bicycles. And some of the bicycles had very, very low markup. Mm-hmm. Now, the high, most of your more common 10 speeds and things like that, the markup was decent. But children's bikes had very, very low markups.
Those were the Raleighs, the 3 speeds and the 5 speeds.
Yeah. But so it's always about return customers. And if you can't handle customer relations, you better hire somebody who can, because it'll soon push you out of business.
The other thing is you treat a customer right and they'll come back. You treat a customer wrong, they're going to tell 10 of their friends how bad things are there.
Correct.
We used to shoot for about an 88% return. I mean, repeat business.
Right.
So 88% of our business was repeat.
Right.
And only 12% was new business.
And I bet a portion of that came from the repeat customers who are bringing new people to you.
Exactly, right. Referrals.
Yep. Right. You need the new business, but as he said, the proportion, you have to have that return customer in the greater proportions. Otherwise, you'll go out of business. There's, as I said. But Joshua, before we get into exactly what business you're into now, you went back, completed your education at UCF after the internship. Mm-hmm. And did you go to graduate school?
I did. I decided to go ahead and do my MBA at UCF. And partly that was motivated by the fact that I would be able to continue my internship at the Entrepreneur Center if I was still a student.
Oh, I see. Well, that's an excellent testimony to the program itself. How many interns do they normally have at the Entrepreneur Center?
When I was there was 2 of us, and following that, I think there continue to be 2 for a while, and I'm not sure now. How the
God, there's let's see, the Hispanic Business Initiative Fund has probably 4. And SBDC has a couple, and SCORE had 2, and most of the agencies in there have used the intern program.
Mm-hmm. So I bet you there's 15 or so total that are there between all the agencies.
Yeah, so there's a lot of great stuff going on at the National Entrepreneur Center for both young and old alike, so to speak.
Yeah.
And how can people get involved if they want to be a mentor again, Rich? Or
Oh, yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Number one, if you've got practical business experience that can be useful to young entrepreneurs or old entrepreneurs like me. And if you want to become a counselor, fill out an application, and we interview you, and then, you go through and do some training with us, and then you're a counselor, a mentor.
And, Rich, you can go to our website, and there is a tab on there to volunteer and fill the application out there.
That's right.
At scoreorlando.org.
Okay, and Don't forget, folks, if you would like to send us suggestions or questions or just make some comments about the show, we'd love to hear from you. And you can email them if you want at score@nationalec.org. That's score@nationalec.org. Or call them over at the Entrepreneur Center. They'd love to hear from you, 407-420-4844. And real quickly, again, Paul, what is the date and time on that upcoming free seminar?
We've got the free seminar on Saturday, September 6th from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., and then a repeat performance on Tuesday, September 9th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and it's at the National Entrepreneur Center, and you just have to show up.
And please, if you show up because of this show, tell them. Let them know down there. We'd love to hear it. Okay, when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with Joshua Johnson. We'll talk a little bit more about what he has done since his internship and how some of the things that he learned as an intern have led to his success since then. Okay, folks, we'll be right back with more from What's the Score? Welcome back to What's the Score, the show designed to help you come up with that winning combination for your business. Hi, I'm Christopher Hart, and once again, thank you for being with us today in the studio. I'm with Rich Jaeckle, who's back in town. Rich, where were you last week, by the way?
Rich is back, yeah.
Where were you?
Frankly, I forgot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know where you were. I know where you were last night. You were bending that elbow mighty rapidly.
No, that was exercise, and I was actually up in St. Augustine. Oh, being historical.
Great little town. And Paul McNally of SCORE. And, of course, Paul is also a business broker. And where can people get a hold of you at your brokerage there, Paul?
They can call me at 407-403-4455. My website is centralfloridabusinessbroker.com. And they can email me at paul@abcbrokerage.com.
And, by the way, folks, you can hear replays of this show at the SCORE website. Okay, so don't forget that. And, of course, we're also joined in the studio today by Joshua Johnson, who's an up-and-coming entrepreneur, and he's gone about this the right way. He started his own business. Was that your first job, your own business?
Yes.
What a man. And he went through UCF, the business program there, got an MBA at UCF in the process, was an intern at the National Entrepreneur Center, and now you're back out on your own.
That's correct.
What are you doing?
Well, I have a company called Learn Everywhere, where we help people to remember what matters to them. Essentially, it's a web platform that reinforces memories, reinforces information that you're trained with in the workplace, educational setting, wherever that may be. I am also teaching entrepreneurial marketing over at UCF for mostly seniors. And in my spare time, I'm the lead advocate for the Rethink Homelessness campaign.
An entrepreneur started a program about memory.
Correct.
Okay, that's not what jumps into people's minds, I don't think, when they think of an entrepreneur. Fill the details in a little bit. What do you mean that you help people remember things that are important to them?
Well, going through education.
And how did you market that?
Sure. So, going through education, obviously I spent a number of years in school.
Sure.
And one of the things that I noticed a lot of people struggle with was studying. They would wait until the last minute. They would cram for their exams. They'd a lot of times pass those exams. But when it came time to take the next exam, they would struggle again because they'd forgotten the information from the previous stuff. So that, and then, looking at that kind of got things started. And then started looking at the research in corporate training. And there was actually a study that was commissioned out of UCF, Dr. Eduardo Salas did, and it showed that 90% of new hire training funds, or that 90% of new hire training is lost in less than 1 year. So essentially 90% of the money that a company is spending to train a new employee is being thrown out the window in a year or less. And, eureka, there's an opportunity there. So essentially we're trying to help companies and organizations save the money that they're already spending.
Rich, let me ask you this. How aware are companies of what he was just talking about, that statistic?
This is a new idea here that's just on the cusp of learning. And when I heard it, I went crazy. Think of that. 90% of the budget for training is lost. So to be more effective, why not have this learning? And it's a cue on your mobile device, isn't it, Joshua?
That's right.
Tell us that.
Yeah, so essentially it's a web platform where you can put all the content in there. Then your employees have the ability to go from their mobile device, they log into the application, they're able to look at all the information, they answer some questions, and based on those answers, whether they're correct or incorrect, we have a pretty good idea of when you need to see it again before you completely forget it. And so basically a timer starts in the background, and then you receive a push notification to your device, and when that comes up, you just tap on it, and it opens directly to that specific piece of information that you're about to forget. You answer the question again, and then if you got it right, we know again when you see it down the road. If you got it correct or incorrect, then we know we need to scale it back a little bit and reset a little bit.
Josh, you mentioned earlier about how a restaurant can use it to train bartenders, and
Sure.
I think that brings everything real clear. Why don't you go through that example, and Rich will be able to relate to that one.
Well,
This bartender has no trouble remembering his order.
how much does it take to open a beer?
So a lot of times, restaurants, they have their own in-house specialty drinks, or there's different processes or procedures that people need to remember. So essentially what a restaurant would do in that case is when they bring on a new employee, or for their existing employees, they put all their content in there. It could be a picture of a drink, with the proper garnish, and, sometimes things have to be poured in a very specific way so they have a certain look to them. And then you can develop questions based on those images. So essentially they go through, they answer the questions, they know whether it's, for example, if it's supposed to be a vodka in a particular drink, or if it's supposed to be gin or something else. And so that way they have the immediate recall. So when a customer comes in and asks for a drink, they're not saying, oh, one second, let me go check with the bartender or check a recipe. They say, yes, of course. Did you want, Bacardi or some other brand for rum in the drink that you're making?
So this thing is a constant refresher for people.
That's correct.
So once they learn the basic, they can't forget, because Big Brother is watching and going to refresh their memory
Right.
and make sure that they don't forget.
Right. And essentially, one thing that's really important to point out is that the intervals at which you need to see information expand over time.
How did you get that interval stuff?
There's actually a lot of research on the topic, and as I was going through those 800 studies, what we found was the conclusion very often was this is an incredibly powerful way to learn, but has not been effectively implemented in the real world. And that's simply because we didn't have the technology available to make it a reality.
Right.
And so originally, we were calling it interval learning, and we kind of had our own thing going, and then we realized, wait a second, this has been researched for 130 years. Well, somebody's probably doing this. We're going down the wrong path. And then we found out that it wasn't being done, especially being built in a platform that corporations could take advantage of.
Yeah.
You said it was being researched for 130 years.
Yes.
Who was doing the research?
There's a gentleman by the name of Ebbinghaus, a German researcher that started back in the 1800s.
He's that old?
Yes. Right there with you, Rich.
Must have gone to school with him, Rich.
I'll tell you what. Real quickly, Paul, obviously this is not your typical business idea. However, this type of idea, it seems to me, could have a great deal of potential. Am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I'm absolutely wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. It's the growth is endless. I mean, you could take this national, international, and this could be big business.
Well, Joshua, obviously when we talk about learning, one of the things that will come to mind, I think, is educating children.
Sure.
Does this have a place in educating our young?
This essentially has a place anywhere or anytime somebody needs to remember anything.
So it could be a language.
Oh, absolutely. It's an extremely powerful way for learning language. And one of the things we're looking at specifically isn't just language learning, but it's language learning for specific industries. So, for example, in the hotel industry, a lot of times the back of the house speaks primarily Spanish and the front of the house primarily speaks English. And there's a couple key employees that are able to translate back and forth. And so what we're looking at doing is not just creating, Spanish and English in general, but we're creating the content based on what's most important for their industry so they can communicate about, linens and food and things like that.
So phrases that pertain to the particular industry, for instance.
Right.
Okay.
What is your business called, and do you have a website?
Absolutely. It's called Learn Everywhere. Then the website is learneverywhere.com.
Wow, that's easy enough to remember. LearnEverywhere.com.
I can say it a few more times.
Yeah. Another push notification you need there.
How difficult has it been to market this?
Well, there's certainly some challenges in place. A lot of companies are already spending money on training, and some of them don't recognize how much that money is being wasted. So there's a big component of making sure that they have the education based on those facts. Some companies are very wired into the way they've done things for 30 years. They love their binders that they've already produced and that they give out.
Can't change.
Exactly. So there's obviously those hurdles, but at the same time, we offer some additional security for those companies if they want to transfer over and use technology to help their employees learn. For example, if an employee leaves and they have your entire manual, the odds are it's at home and they already have that. But if an employee leaves and they're using our software, you simply remove them and they no longer have access to the content that belongs to your company.
Ooh, so the trademarked and all this other stuff,
exactly.
They can't walk out the door and be duplicated someplace else. Right. Excellent.
So is every program custom designed for each customer separately?
The content is custom designed. The platform itself doesn't really change. Now, you mentioned dealing with kids, and specifically when you get into younger, like elementary school ages, the algorithm does need to change, and which is why we're not really attacking that market right now, because their brains are a little bit different. But
their interval is different.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. But once you are in middle school, or even probably around 5th grade or so, from there on out, unless you have a brain injury or a brain affecting disorder or disease, for the most part, it doesn't change.
How about that?
I see. This is a fantastic business idea.
So there's also a lot of applications in medical, folks that have Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injury and things like that.
I was getting ready to ask you, my mother suffered from Alzheimer's, and by the way, there's a great Alzheimer's walk event coming up at Lake Eola in October we'll be talking about on our other radio show. But you think that this could actually have applications with people who are already suffering from the disease, or are you as a preventative thing, or both?
It wouldn't necessarily be preventative, although it would help if somebody has been diagnosed and they're starting to slide. The biggest benefit that we've found in talking to medical professionals is that when folks, especially when they're farther along in the progression of the disease, one of the most traumatic things they experience it regularly, is when family members and friends come to visit them and they don't remember them. Right. And so just simply being reminded of them periodically of who they are with a simple image of them and this is your son. And in those cases, oftentimes, a nurse would be there to help kind of facilitate that, to make sure they're seeing the content, make sure they're answering the questions. But we're the ones that keep the nurse on track to make sure that the patient stays on track with that.
Amazing.
So that interval would be shorter.
It would be a little bit different, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, once again, we're talking with Joshua Johnson. And Joshua, going from, detailing automobiles to having a company with this sophisticated of a service to help people, help companies help people remember, what led to that huge leap? Let me put it this way, because you kind of explained that, but did having that original business and being the intern give you the confidence that it would take to take something like this and think you could actually make it,
implement it?
Exactly.
Yes. So I've actually had a number of companies in between that, and they've been in a number of different industries. And I have the unfortunate habit, I guess, of jumping in industries that I don't have previous experience in, because that makes it very interesting to me. There's a lot to learn. I get really excited about that.
But you do your homework.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Which Rich stresses here. You read 800 reports.
Yes.
So you didn't really jump into an industry.
No, but the idea of being open to something that isn't natural to me, as far as like getting into cognitive science and software development, neither of which are in my background, I wasn't daunted by that at all. I just saw it as an exciting new challenge.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, and stick around, because the challenge of What's the Score is going to come back right after this break. We'll continue the conversation with Joshua Johnson about his great idea and his experiences with the Entrepreneur Center. And don't forget, folks, Rich, real quick.
Yeah, I wanted to remind everybody that this is a website change here, and thanks to Ruth Bresnik, one of our SCORE counselors, who reminded us that we were giving the old website. Yeah. So once again, Paul, what's the new one?
It is scoreorlando.org.
Right. We were saying score.orlando.org, right, but you didn't just leave out the dots between Orlando and score. Okay, so that's scoreorlando.org, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to What's the Score? Once again, thanks for being with us here today, folks. I'm Christopher Hart in the studio with Rich Jaeckle of SCORE, Paul McNally of SCORE, and Joshua Johnson of Learning Easy.
Learn everywhere.
Learn everywhere. See, I need to hear it a couple more times before I get it imprinted in the old brain.
There's an added thing you could do for guys like Chris. Mm-hmm. You could have like a little electrical shock. So when you remind him of something, it shocks him. So like Pavlov's dog.
A little negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Is that what your wife does for you, Rich?
There's no little current there.
All right. Once again, that's learneverywhere.com. And once again, folks, if you would like to explore the possibility of being on radio yourself, either by having your own show like this, and I tell you, if Rich can do it, anybody can do it, right?
There you go, right.
Or if you would like to explore the possibility of advertising on radio, it's a great way to get your name and focus into the demographic that you want to get to. Call Paul at 407-618-1769. That's call Paul at 407-618-1769.
That's the new tagline. Call Paul?
Call Paul.
All right.
Let's see, I can remember that.
Sounds like a parrot.
All right. Now, when I was in school, Joshua, the teachers would have us repetitively write things down. Mm-hmm. Is that sort of a similar thing that you're doing? Is that repetitiveness is what ingrains it into your brain, so to speak?
Yes, it is the repetition. But again, the key to that isn't just the repetition, it's the timing of the repetition.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people say, practice makes perfect. Well, practice makes really good, but properly timed practice is what actually makes perfect.
Yeah, if
timing
you can't remember to repeat it,
right.
This is a trigger to remind you that it's time for you to think about this again, correct?
And that's why the science has been around for so long, but it hasn't been effectively implemented. They've only been able to research it in lab settings because it would take so much work to be able to figure out when somebody needed to see something, make sure that person was there, make sure the content was there, track to make sure they got it right or wrong, and repeat that procedure again and again. There wasn't a way to do that and be able to walk around and continue on with your life.
Now, will this work with any technology? In other words, can it work with Apple? Can it work with BlackBerry? Can it work with all the other ones?
So iOS and Android,
iOS.
No BlackBerry or Windows Mobile at this point. If we see enough of a demand for it, then we would certainly develop for it.
What if somebody doesn't have a smartphone? Can it be done with a desktop?
Yes, absolutely. There is a web app that can be used, and we're currently working to improve that to allow the push notifications to exist on the desktop as well.
What are you going to do? Carry that on your back?
Well, for people that are in an office setting.
Sure. Okay. Is it very expensive?
No, it really isn't. I mean, if you look at how much money there's already being spent on training, we're a fraction of that cost. And again, we're helping to ensure that training is not going to waste.
Ideally, you would be there from the very beginning of the training of a new employee, but obviously that's not going to be the case all the time. Is it as effective with employees who have already been on the job doing things a certain way?
Absolutely. Look at any type of sales position. Your products are going to change over the course of time, especially for, like sports equipment, for example, or any specialty items. There's always new innovations, there's new products, and you need to learn all the different attributes of those products in order to be able to sell them effectively.
Electronics.
And so any type of product knowledge situation, electronics is another big one. Product knowledge is another great category for us. It doesn't matter how long you've been selling it. You have your sales pitch down. You know the process for that. But as far as remembering all the actual products and what they do and how they work and how they best benefit your customers, that changes every time a new one comes out.
So this would be good for year 2, year 3 for advanced training also?
Absolutely.
Josh, I got to ask you here, just off that topic, onto the intern topic. Mm-hmm. Small businesses don't have a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. How can you go in and help a small business? Now, the typical problem that we run into is marketing. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to blog. They don't know anything about social media.
Right.
They don't know how to set it up, and therefore they don't know how to communicate with their target market. What can you do for me?
Well, you can definitely reach out to the university. There's a lot of ways to connect to interns. The key thing is to make sure that you have a properly defined position that they're going to fill, so they know what is going to be expected of them.
So job description.
Yes, and then also make sure that job description, part of that, or I would say half of that, needs to entail them learning something. So the way I position that is, for example, for a company where they're really struggling with internet marketing and social media,
right,
you're going to bring in a student who really understands those platforms. They know how to communicate there, but they are still learning some of the basic principles of business. So while they're going to come in and help educate you and get those programs up and running, you can then educate them on all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Product or service.
Absolutely. Well, and industry and the process of filing your articles of incorporation, or just the sage wisdom and advice that you get from people who have been there and they've done that.
Well, isn't it a key factor in reaching your target market? And that's a combination of the technology guy or marketing guy and the business owner. The business owner should have their target market defined and profiled, and then the technology works with the business owner to say, okay, how do we reach these guys?
Absolutely.
Correct?
So in that case, the employer would help to educate the intern on how they went through the process of identifying their target market and what they've done so far to communicate with them. And then the intern can help them figure out which are the appropriate platforms to reach them on now, whether that's Pinterest or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever that might be.
So it's like bringing in a marketing advisor in effect for about 1/10 the cost.
Oftentimes, yes. Yes. And one of the things I'll say, too, is that internships, a lot of times, they're not high-paid positions.
No.
But you will find that these days a lot of students will not take internships that are not paid, because they understand that they are bringing value to the table. They understand they have a skill set that oftentimes the employers do not have, and they want to be compensated for that, and rightly so.
Very interesting.
But, in a lot of cases, what they're paying the interns is only a fraction of what they would have paid if they're going out and hiring somebody.
Right. So I do some consulting work in that particular area, and it's anywhere from $150 to a couple $100 an hour to come in and do that. And they could probably get an intern in there for $10, $12 an hour. Or a lot of times what happens is they'll bring me in, help them get the program set up, and then they'll have an intern to actually execute it, after I leave.
So it would be a wise decision for these small businesses to get an intern in, and maybe once a week, to update their blog and to reach out and keep their social media active and stuff like that. And it could cost them very little to do that, but the return on it is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Because you're reaching your target market.
And you're potentially getting your next new hire. If you take really good care of them and they do a great job for you, then when they graduate and they're ready for full-time employment, they already know your company, they know your brand, they know how to communicate on your behalf, and they can just slide right in. You now understand and have realized the value that they bring to the table, so you can pay them appropriately for that.
Yeah, so Chris couldn't make any money then.
Cut down on your training expenses at that point.
Yeah.
Joshua, do you use interns now?
I don't right now, but I have in the past, yes. And my fiance has used interns as well. So.
Okay. Now, once again, this is learneverywhere.com.
Correct.
And are you looking to expand the business? In other words, you're obviously looking for customers.
Absolutely.
But are you also looking for people to help you expand the business?
What we're looking for is vertical partners. So, we've built a platform that helps people to remember the things that matter to them, but I am not an expert in a number of industries, in most industries. And so what we're really looking for is partners that are experts in those various fields to develop that content that can go into our system, and then we can go out and sell that.
I see. So this would be restaurant field,
right.
Auto parts
medical,
field.
legal, higher education, K-12, everything.
Okay.
Before I forget, can we just talk real quick about upcoming guests?
Absolutely, we should, as a matter of fact, because we're running a little short on time. So who's going to be our guest next week, Paul? And how are you going to top this guy?
Yeah, really.
It's going to be a tough one, but he might bring some food, so that might be the answer right there. But we've got Gary Malini, who owns Without a Paddle Cafe, which is a food trailer at Wekiva Island here in Longwood.
What's Wekiva?
Wekiva Island. That's the northern part of the city.
I got it.
And Gary is going to talk about the differences between having a food truck or food trailer versus a full-size restaurant. Prior to him having this, he owned Straub Seafood in Altamont Springs, Gleason's Grill, Otter's Restaurant in Sanford. He's had a number of places around town, so he's going to be bring us up to speed and get us back in the restaurant business. And he's from the same city you're from, Rich, Buffalo, New York.
There we go. Yeah, we're all from there.
And by the way, folks, last week we thought we were going to have an inventor who has come up with a great medical device. Dr. Pete.
Pete McClendon?
Yes.
Oh,
we had to rebook him, but he will be on the show when, Paul?
He'll be on September 4th. It'll be the show following Gary. So he will be here on the 4th. And then on the 11th, we've got Jeanette Scott, who is a fashion blogger and Joshua's fiancée.
Yes. All right.
Her company is Jay's Everyday Fashion.
Jay's Everyday Fashion. Okay,
Yep.
and tell us a little bit about her accolades there.
Well, how long do we have? She's
good answer.
She's
The elevator speech.
incredibly talented. She helps everyday women.
Connections with Walmart and Disney.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She's partnered with some major brands, Walmart. She wrote for Disney for a while for Babbel. She's partnered with Gap. Any brand you can think of, she's partnered with, helping to make fashion affordable and accessible.
Okay, she's a fashion blog.
Yes. All right. And once again, you can find out more about Joshua's business at learneverywhere.com. That's learneverywhere.com. It sounds like a fantastic idea. I wish I had come up with it.
Thank you.
And it really sounds like it could help out any business person out there. And so give them a try and get a hold of Joshua at learneverywhere.com. And don't forget, folks, we're looking for questions and suggestions and comments from you about the show. And you can go to score@nationalec.org to give those to us. That's score@nationalec.org. If you'd just simply like to find out more about SCORE, go to scoreorlando.org, and there's a lot of stuff there available at scoreorlando.org. And if you'd like to set up an appointment with a member of SCORE, give them a call at the Entrepreneur Center at 407-420-4844. Once again, the Entrepreneur Center is in the Orlando Fashion Square Mall. The National Entrepreneur Center is located between Sears and JCPenney, inside the Fashion Square Mall, just inside one of the exterior doors.
Yeah, it's
real.
The building with the vines.
You can't miss it. You can't miss it. And once again, Rich and Paul and I will be back next week with Gary from Wekiva Island, and it'll be a fascinating conversation. Maybe we can get him to bring a few of his customers along with him.
I don't know. Let's just stick to food.
Okay. But once again, folks, we want to thank you so very much. And if you would like to find out about how to be on radio, either as an advertiser or on a show like this, don't forget to call Paul at Salem Communications at 407-618-1769. That's 407-618-1769.
Yeah, and that's not Paul McNally. That's Paul Proley.
That's Paul. That's right, from Salem Communications. Joshua, thanks for being with us today. And once again, great idea, and we'd love to hear back from you in the future to hear how this is going.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And one last real quick question. Do you think this will be the last business that you start?
No way. Definitely not.
I knew the answer to that going in.
I love it, and I'll stick with it for a while, but there'll be more.
A real entrepreneur changes about every 4 years.
Yep. Is that right?
Tell them where I found you.
We were on Park Ave, or just off Park Ave. I was at Shea Vincent having dinner with my fiance.
All right. Okay, you know how to pick them out, don't you, Rich?
Oh, man.
All right, folks, we'll see you next week.